Right, delighted to welcome Brian Moore, co-founder and CEO of Orreco, back to the show. Brian, how are you getting on?
Very well, thanks, Owen. How are you?
Not too bad, thanks. So we're here to talk about the return to play and sport. How have you been helping out? What has your company and your data been accomplishing?
Well, it's certainly a very interesting time in sport. Obviously, that's secondary to everything that's going on in the world, and what a desperately sad the global impact of COVID. For a sporting context, there are challenges around safe return, whether that's transmission of the virus, but also the impact of the virus. So we're a sports and data science company. We look after some of the best athletes on the planet, and we were approached by one of our clients, Newcastle United, to say, okay, look, how can we practically help? And we built them a C19 Symptom Tracker on a progressive web app to help them to monitor the squad. So in terms of any symptoms they may have, their temperature logged every day, fever, shortness of breath, dry cough, sore throat, or the loss of smell or taste. So we built this progressive web app for them, and that was very well received. And then Dr. Caddison at Newcastle introduced us to Dr. Iqbal, who's the chairman of the Premier League Doctors Medical Committee, and he took it on for his club and recommended it elsewhere. So it's been a different time, but also a busy time for our team.
So the C19 Symptom Tracker, as developed by Orreco, is now being used across a range of Premier League clubs at the moment.
Yes. It's part of the daily return to play protocols. So your listeners might have seen it's very comprehensive in terms of what can happen. It was a staged return. Obviously, we're all excited to see football, live football return this evening. But it handled a lot of what was happening in the to give the confidence of the players as well and the staff for their safety to return. So in terms of what they were doing to when they arrived at the training ground, how they arrived, and every morning they must fill out the symptom tracker, and it turns their mobile phone into almost like a bio passport. So when they've completed it and there's no symptoms and their temperature is normal, it's a green flashcard. I don't know if your viewers can see it. We can send a link. And then if they must fill in every day, it defaults to amber overnight. And if they've any symptoms, or if they've travelled or had close contact with someone with symptoms, that flashes red, and then it's followed up by the medical team, and before the player is actually allowed into the training ground.
Right. Okay. How long did this take to develop? Like, it must have been a fairly quick action once you realised that this was going to become a hugely significant scientific innovation.
Well, yeah. To be honest, where it came about was we were here in Ireland, and we saw a call for the idea of a symptom tracker could be useful for Ireland. So we contributed some research through NUIG and Dr. Andrew Simpkin, and just basically handed over our engineering team to help the effort. And once that was completed, and then we spoke to Dr. Caddison. He said, this is going to save me an awful lot of time, and he wanted an audit trail as well for his for the club, so that they could see and track over time. And so it was over the course of about six weeks that it was developed and built, 6 to 7. Obviously had to be tested, and then it was a baptism of fire that first weekend when multiple Premier League teams all returned to training. And at the same time, we have clients in the NBA. So the Dallas Mavericks deployed it with their players and also front office staff, as did the Atlanta Hawks. So a massive testament to our team, our engineering teams in Galway and Applied Sports Science in London, and also in Los Angeles. So it was a team effort.
So this has been done. Oh, sorry, Will, go on.
Sorry, Brian. I was going to say, obviously, that's a focus on elite sport, the NBA and the Premier League. Is the possibility for this app to be rolled out for amateur athletes? I mean, given that we're going to have Gaelic Games returning at the end of next month, that they have to have a COVID supervisor and they have to fill out, forms about their symptoms and so on. Does this have an application further down the sporting pyramid as well?
Absolutely. That's a great question, Will. We've actually been working very closely with World Rugby. As an example, Mark Harrington, Dr. Aina Falvey, and your contributor, Dr. Ross Tucker, who were really, who were impressed with it at the elite side, and they could see the application. They introduced it to all their teams, but also they're really keen on a community version. So we've been working on that, with the view to rolling it out in the next 4 weeks or so. And that community version will. There was a fantastic Malachy Clerkin piece, and recently, about how everybody in the club or whatever sporting team you're with knows who the most organised person is, and they typically will be your COVID officer. And chatting to Padraig Harrington as well, he just said, look, every club's got that one person. So if that you are that person, we have a community version that's coming. Just email us c19@orreco.com, and we'll register your interest. because I think it's a huge component of the audit trail. I think you can understand that clubs are scrambling to do this, but like pen and paper is going to be another challenge on top of, there's a lot to think about. So here's a ready to go system that will save a lot of time and protect your players and your community members.
And have you been referencing data with the testing then, the actual COVID test in the Premier League?
The medical teams have, so there's a back-end system where the medic can view all the data in context.
Right.
And so right now it's a pretty blunt instrument in terms of, like, if you have symptoms, then it's flagging as red.
Okay.
But there's the capability within the system then to put weightings at the different symptoms. So it's a part of a whole package. For example, the loss of smell and loss of taste are strong indicators that are emerging, and there's new kind of symptoms that, as we understand more about the virus, that are important to be tracked. So the teams will cross-reference that information in the background, and again, so it's how it's working in the Premier League is there's twice a week nasopharyngeal swabbing, which some of your listeners might have already had, or you might have seen the videos, which don't look like a whole lot of fun, but it's important to get a really good sample. And then that's in concert then with the symptom tracking to kind of protect everybody. And that's happening now in multiple sports. In the NBA, they're returning to a bubble in Orlando at Disneyland. So these type of packages are really important to be rolled out together.
What's the next innovation within the app, Brian?
So the C19 tracker is actually built into something called Athlete. One that we're excited about. It's been 10 years in development, and what it does is it pulls all your information into one place. So it has your GPS data, has your sleep data, has your travel schedule. So for our NBA teams, we know how many time zones they cross. But even travel stress locally is important. To 3 or 4 hours on a bus traveling. Also has all your nutrition in one place, so we can link back to your GPS. So in the morning, there's an AI recommender system that sits behind it, and it will explain to you, okay, Owen, look, you've been testing a lot of biscuits lately, and you've been testing, the Moros, which is obviously fine in balance and moderation, but it can tell you, based on how many high intensity sprints you did last night, what should be in that recovery drink, and that links that back then to your counter movement jump, to your sleep profile, and it's basically an AI coach in your pocket, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Right, that's very interesting. And it's also key, I'd imagine, given all the innovations that have happened from your company within the last couple of years, because I think we had you on, I think it was maybe last year or the year before, Brian, just chatting about the blood data that you had been using when it came to the NBA. And there was a great piece in The Athletic a few months ago about Pascal Siakam of the Toronto Raptors, and how your blood data of his actually managed to allow him to recover better, to allow his game management to be monitored a little bit better, and ultimately ended up in him getting a pretty fat contract at the end of it all after a brilliant season last year with Toronto. Could you explain to us a little bit about that and how those innovations are continuing as well?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, Pascal had an amazing season, or a couple of seasons. He came from one of the lowest drafted positions in the NBA to getting a max contract, $130 million, similar to your salary, I'd imagine. But he's so Pascal's an amazing example. We worked with him and his agent Todd Ramazar at Live Sports, and it's really trying to get a 360 picture of Pascal. He works extremely hard, so it's just finding that balance between working and recovering. And I suppose he's an example of it in action. So we have, all his game data, we have his travel schedules, and we can give him those personalized suggestions to help him recover better. And I think this is going to be very interesting. You might have seen, there's been already a spike in the Bundesliga of injuries where players have, returned, and then there's soft tissue injuries because of a spike in load after a truncated season, then a period of detraining, and then a ramp back up. So I suppose on one of the positive sides is that due to COVID, no one really needs to be told or reminded what the immune system is and how important it is. So what we're doing with the blood data is getting a sense check on it, and you're starting to see, increased oxidative stress or, poor antioxidant defenses, and so like fruit and veg intake. So the advice is consistent in terms of, look, you need to recover. That's where our company name came from. OR is the Irish for gold, and RECO short for recovery. So it's getting good fueling, it's controlling the load properly, and then everybody's handling the load in an individual way. Some players can tolerate higher loads, it seems, and others just need additional support. So
that's the really interesting thing, actually. Like you can see on the back pages this morning, we're not ready. It says it's back, ready or not. This is all with regards to Pep Guardiola. Ready to crumble, says the back at the Star this morning. This is Pep pointing out that injuries are going to be of a much higher possibility, and your data suggests that as well.
Yeah, and like there is precedent. If you look at the NFL lockout of 2011, there was with a very similar kind of run-in period, there was an epidemic of Achilles injuries. So it really is a concern, and the medical staff and performance staff are working double time because, again, they typically would have more time with the players. They can build in contact training, and it is definitely challenging. But so our tools would be a part of that. One of the challenges right now is a further challenge. I'm not sure if the articles referenced them, is that under the return to play protocols, the medical treatments are only limited to 15 minutes. So not only have you less contact time with the player, you're actually mandated. You can't do your usual treatment protocols with them. The players have to turn up in their kit. I can share with you. We have really nice insights from the medical teams, and some also recent scientific paper. Maybe include some links if some of your listeners are interested in them. Because there are real practical challenges. Not only limited contact time, limited treatment time. For example, on our blood side, we ran some of the return to play full COVIDs, but some of the challenges are, unless it's an emergency medical treatment or procedure, it's not going to happen. So it certainly is an interesting time, and whilst we all are delighted to see sport coming back, there are really significant things to be taken into consideration behind the scenes. And to be fair, sorry,
Brian, can I just ask you about data protection on this? Is there a way of you restricting who in the club or the team can actually get access to the data, or how does that work?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a critical component of everything that we do. So obviously with GDPR regulations that we're all familiar with now, in the US there's HIPAA compliance. So it's completely locked down. There's confidential medical information that only the physician will see. It's the property of the athlete and of the player, and that gets limited to actually who within the club can see it. One of our directors and first investors is Tom Killalay. He was the VP of technology at Amazon, and he led the AWS and Kindle. He was also the first security officer for Amazon. So, like everything that we do has to be data security and confidentiality has to be baked into, which it is.
Brian, it's fascinating stuff. Very best of luck with the next phase of the app, and fair play on everything so far. It's been great chatting to you, Brian Moore.
Thanks very much, Owen.